Technology is here to stay and is a great part of our lives, but is technology spiritually healthy? There's a wide spectrum of parents on the issue of technology, from the far right who do not like technology and do not allow it, to the far left who have abdicated their parenting to technology and allow kids to freely use technology. They use technology on their kids like a pacifier is for infants, to keep them occupied and quiet. With the COVID-19, we are seeing a greater use of technology to socialize, educate, and entertain. But is technology the issue, or is it how we use it or what we allow as parents? Hello, everyone. Today's episode is about parenting and technology. Technology, like all things in life, is morally neutral, neither good or bad, like a gun or a knife. It really depends on how and what we use it for. Yet, many parents fear technology or don't care. I'm going to discuss how parents can integrate technology in their children's life to maximize social safety and spiritual growth. As parents, we can become saints by simply growing in virtue and holiness in this technology challenge. Not theoretical, but practical. Real-life Catholic advice from Practical Catholic.
Welcome to another episode of Practical Catholic with David Cease. Practical Catholic is a spiritual coaching show to help you find peace, love, and joy in family and work life. We are here each and every week to help you grow spiritually, to become successful in this life, and to be a saint for the life after.
My story begins when I was a little kid. I was about 8 years old. And one of the things I used to like to do is ride my bicycle. The bicycle for me was like a car. It gave me a lot of freedom. And I was able to ride it almost everywhere, at least 2-3 miles away from my house. But, in those days, it's kind of strange, right? I was 8 years old. And so not far away, I would probably say like a little over half a mile away from my house was this 7-Eleven. I really liked going there because a lot of times I would buy these, I guess it was Slim Jims at the time or other types of treats. So I would go in there and buy some treats and then leave. So, but getting to the 7-Eleven, I had to cross this, a really busy, almost highway-like road. It was 2 lanes on both sides, so 4 lanes altogether. And so my parents, especially my mother, really said, no, you can't cross that. You can't go to that 7-Eleven. So one day, as I was riding this bicycle, a good friend of mine, we'll call him, Johnny. So Johnny, says to me, "Hey, David, let's go to 7-Eleven." And I remember, looking at him, and I said, "Hey, Johnny, my parents don't allow me to go to 7-Eleven." And he said, "Don't worry about it. They'll never know. We'll go over there and we'll get our treats." So I said, "Okay." So we cross the street and on our bicycles, and we go to 7-Eleven. I get my Slim Jim, and come back, and I'm eating it. I'm like, that was great. So later that evening, we have dinner, and I'm all happy eating this dinner and everything. And my mother says, "David," and I go, "Yeah, Mom." She goes, "Were you at 7-Eleven today?" And I remember looking at her and going, No, I wasn't. I was kind of, I was with Johnny." And then, at that point, my siblings kind of knew I was in trouble, and they were just quiet. And my mother goes, "You didn't happen to have a Slim Jim, and eating that with Johnny?" And at that time, I finally realized that, she caught me. So I said, yes. And like all parents, I got into deep trouble. I think I went into my room and was pretty much grounded for the rest of the day. So that's a story that is so hilarious because, I really thought my mother was omniscient. At years old, she wasn't around. How in the world did she know that I went to 7-Eleven? But later you find out that as all good parents, you have your parenting network that will tell on you. So no, she wasn't omniscient, but she was very well connected. And the lesson is parentings have a great role in bringing up their children. It was an event that I remembered, and I think that's what really kept me honest most of the time, because I realized that there must be some kind of omniscience that are out there that they're always going to know. So that one little incident pretty much helped me keep myself to be honest and truthful in most of my life. So and also realized that as I got older, that it does take a village to raise kids. That we can't raise kids by ourselves. We need to have a good community of parents that also keep an eye on our children. That we can't fear that there's parents out there that are trying to be evil towards our kids. That we do need a community to rear our kids. And so we're pretty, I would say, lucky to fall in a homeschool society group that really have bonded with great parents in rearing our kids. So today's topic is about technology. I am a computer science major. My wife is a computer science major. My wife and I both started our business in computers. My wife has more experience, I think, at the beginning, because she went right into the computer field. But I went into the Marine Corps, which also helped me create and have an understanding of operations and how things work, which really greatly helped me out in business. So we're going to be talking about technology and how to integrate this technology from a parenting standpoint, okay? And what is our responsibility? I'm going to break this up minimally, at least into 2 episodes, maybe 3. But the 2 main parts of it are parenting and our responsibility as parents when it comes to technology, and then how to effectively roll out a technology plan and do those types of things. While the second part is going to be focusing on the technology itself, okay, and the dangers, and not only the dangers, but also some of the technology that can actually help you out. And it just isn't just net nanny that's going to help you out. In fact, that's the least thing that's going to help you out. But there are some very, very different technologies. What are their dangers? What is it out there? This is not meant to be making you some kind of a IT professional, but it is something that you can be familiar with and discuss and do your own research, and maybe possibly integrating it into your own life. So again, the first part about parenting and their responsibility, and the second is using is the various technologies and how they could be applied and used in your situation. So, without further ado, let's talk about this episode and what we're going to be doing. And again, what is the zoom out point of view, right? The biggest thing about the zoom out point of view is the fact that technology isn't something to be feared. Technology is here to stay. And Maximilian Kolbe always believed that we use technology to glorify God. We use technology to do that, right? That he was not this hunker down mentality. We're going to live in a boxed in society and doing that, right? So we have to understand that technology is like a tool, like anything else. It is there. So, but there are some dangers and those types of things, and we need to be aware of that. And that that by this awareness, we can then implement this a technology, what I call a technology policy or family kind of a methodology or something like that. I really prefer policy more than anything else. Okay. So what is the zoom in main point that we're going to be talking about and focusing on? It's parents. Parents have the major role in technology and what goes on, okay? I will say that leadership really, really is important to any organization. I was never, when I enlisted in the Marines, we used to always joke around about how officers were, they absolutely do nothing. And the enlisted, ranks do that every once in a while. But when I became an officer in the Marines, I realized how much of an impact, that leadership makes, all right? How it influences the troops. how it can either bring the morale down or bring the morale up and do everything. Just look at this whole COVID-19 episode. You got different policies in different states. You got states like Florida who minimize the COVID and now all of a sudden everyone's getting sick, and you have up here where we're wearing masks and everything. Whether you agree with it or not, it is a different type of leadership that is handling this COVID-19. So as parents, we have a vital role in our children, and believe it or not, it is God-given, right? So being a parent is God-given. God has given us these children so that we can, lead them, all right? Leading doesn't always mean micromanagement or all the other stuff that goes on, but we do have to lead them by example and lead them by policies. And so, what we're going to see is that I'm going to explain a lot of this zoom-in point of how to parent so that it's easier to parent within technology and doing that. And it's when I say easy, it's never easy, but it's going to be easier and it's going to help out greatly in parenting with technology. Okay, so let's talk about just briefly. The idea is technology evil? Is there this idea that technology is evil? And it's not. We have to understand that. Okay, technology is not evil. All right. It is a morally neutral thing, like a gun or a knife. Guns are used to hunt. Guns are there to protect. Police officers have guns. So there's a lot of uses of guns. There's also a lot of uses of knife. We cook with a knife. We butcher with knives. We survive on knives. We can we can whittle with a knife and build things. But guns and knives can also be used for evil. They murder, they can threaten, they can do serious harm. But does that mean that we should say that guns and knives should be illegal? No, they shouldn't be. Okay, it'd be awkward trying to cut up a piece of steak when you can't have a knife. So we can understand that these are morally neutral objects. And so we need to be able to harness that power to bring Christ into the world. That's the challenge. You'll always see how a technology that comes into play throughout history usually tends to be used for military purposes first, then peaceful actions later, okay? Whether it's the spear or whether it's the chariot or look at the nuclear bomb. We harnessed the nuclear bomb to win a war in World War II, and then eventually we realized how to make energy out of it, how to use it to make energy, how to use just radiation research even for medical purposes. So technology is not evil. It's a good thing, but we got to be careful. So what do we need to be careful about? Okay, there's lots of things we need to be careful about, right? The first is bad information. Okay, bad information. Whether technology is coming on television, we're using high definition television, or we're watching Netflix, or we're doing all these things. Searching the internet, being on social media. These all have some level of bad information. The World Wide Web has bad information. So in the bad information, there's also good information as well, right? So how do we discern? How do we keep the bad information out there, right? What about pornography? Pornography is completely free out there, and it's widely available. I had a funny story where I was in the Marine Corps. This was back in 1995 when the internet was fairly new. And a good friend of mine, he was a captain, rushes into my office. I was the IT officer. And he said to me, he goes, "David," I go, "What?" And he goes, "Well, I accidentally went to a pornographic site." Now, at that time, I don't know how it is now in the Marine Corps, but back in the mid-1990s, it was a court-martial offense if you went to one of these sites. And he had accidentally went there. So I went to him, and he goes, well, I deleted everything. They'll never know. And I looked at him. I said, are you sure? We'll call him Larry in this case. I said, hey, Larry. I said, are you sure that you deleted everything? He goes, yeah. And then so I went over to his computer, and I knew some tricks, and I went back to the site. He had such a panicked look. He unplugs the computer. He almost like threw the computer out the window because he was thinking he was going to get court-martialed. So I told Larry, I said, Larry, don't worry. As the IT officer, I know that you did it by accident. And then I asked him, I said, what were you doing that you went into this site anyhow? And he said, well, I was going to this gaming website. And I said, Larry, this is not even allowed even to go to a gaming website. I said, you should be playing games at work. And he was like, oh, well, So it could be, there's bad things out there, right? So there's pornography. There's the dark web and things that are going on down there. So there is some cautions. Okay, so there's bad information. The second is there are experts or so-called experts that are teaching our kids bad things. Okay, so these are things that you might not want our kids to learn. Okay, they might sound innocuous, but they're not. Okay, and so you got to be careful about that. All right, so we have to make sure that they are, getting information, the right information that are out there. Okay, we're talking about isolationism. Okay, so kids become isolated. All right, I will say that my friends, even though our kids do socialize with homeschoolers most of the time, you can see a great difference between homeschoolers and see people who come from schools that they're constantly on their phone. They don't know when, to put it down and say, I'm not going to be on the phone. This sense of isolationism occurs. Or they go into their room and they're on the web. They're on these things. So they create their own, fake world. There's a fake world that they'll create. As mentioned in previous podcasts, people create their own voyeurism by watching YouTube and trying to live vicariously through their social followers and influencers and everything. So you got to be careful about isolationism as well as living a fake life. An alter life. It's funny because in the computer world, you really can create an alter ego. Because there's this social distance between the physical world and the virtual world. And I saw that happening when I went to computer science. There was I had a friend of mine. In fact, we were roommates, actually in our senior year. But before we were roommates, we were we were close physically. We were like best buddies. But then, when at that time when there was this thing called I think it was called chat, and it was just a real-time way of chatting. This is now early 1990s, and because we were both computer science majors, we had the latest and greatest technology at that time. So we were chatting back and forth, and every time we were chatting, it was like an alter ego. He was a completely different person. And I remember this one time, we were literally physically only about 4 computers away from each other, and we're having this heated discussion. And I'm like, how did this occur? And I stood up and I said, Larry, I said, what are you trying to get at? And we looked at each other and it's like, well, and he toned down and we started talking. And I said, I think there's a lot of miscommunication. So he had an alter ego. He was building an alter ego because of this virtual type of that because we're not so close, that he could almost create an alter ego of who he is in this virtual life. And that's what he was doing. And so we can see that occurring. You can see that in influencers. That in fact, there's a great, memes out there and jokes that basically say, hey, this is how he really is. And this is how he is on the internet. And how he really is this undressed and shuffle the person, but in the internet world, he's this prim and proper, wearing a suit and tie type of a person. So we can definitely create this fake alter ego in there. Okay, The biggest thing is social skills, okay? So there's two parts of social skills. One is how do they live in the real world with social skills, but also social skills in the internet world where there's bullying and child predators out there. Especially, and I'm not picking on teenage girls, or even I would even say tweenage girls as well. But but there's a lot of predators out there, especially men predators, who really will jump on young girls, okay, and they will basically try to friend them because why? There's that physical distance, and so we got to be very careful of that social area. How about bullying, right? Bullying occurs very frequently in social media. Why? Because whenever you talk about the fake world, or the virtual world, I should say, the virtual world, there is this sense of inhibitions that are lost. It's almost like alcohol, right? And so when you talk about the virtual life, inhibitions end because they don't have to confront the person. This is why you see Facebook, and you might have a really close friend on Facebook or a really close friend on Instagram who all of a sudden turns on you, maybe because it's a political view or a something, right? They turn on you because their inhibition has been lowered. This is so important to understand, okay? So the virtual world becomes, in essence, almost like alcohol when they just say things, whether they're angry or physical. But if they were physically there, they would have to control themselves. They would have to be able to control themselves and say, "Hey, this is not really appropriate," or whatever it is. Okay, so the virtual world does create that, and so there's a social skills that needs to be groomed both in the virtual world, in the computer world, as well as in the physical world. And so what technology does is that, especially with lack of parenting, we see, the social skills in the internet world being completely unruly and inhibitions out the door, and creating almost like an alter ego that is completely different from what they are. Conversely, in the physical world, because of this isolationism, and they're isolated, they really can't socialize in the physical world either. So, in essence, they're dysfunctional in the virtual life, and they're dysfunctional in the social life, creating two alter egos and two fake worlds, And you can see that happening. I saw that a little bit inside of my friend when I was in college. We were both computer science major. So we have to be able to unite those together, okay? To basically say what I am on the internet world, okay, or in technology world, I am the same in the physical world, okay? And we want to emphasize the physical world, right? So, one of the things I would like to say is that the good points of this COVID issue, right, is the idea that I hope everyone's COVID out, or zoomed out, they call it now, zoomed out. They're tired of the Zoom. They actually want to physically see people. So I hope that in some ways this is this whole, COVID thing is a blessing in disguise because we've been socializing so much on Zoom that people really want to go and talk to people and physically be. So when all of this COVID stuff ends, that we will have a new awakening of let's stop watching, television, and let's stop the technology and see our friends physically. So I hope that happens. Let's pray about that. But there are these cautions. And I would probably say that the first one is bad information. That literally is the worst. We're seeing congressional, investigations on the big social media people like, Facebook and Twitter and everything, and how they influence, these people. And they're outright telling people, these legislators, that the president is a liar, he's this, he's that. Whether he is or not, I can't validate that or not, right? Because I quite frankly, I don't pay attention to that. But what we do see, though, is that they have the power to censor one group of people, but not the other group of people. That they're saying that this group of people are liars and these people aren't. Okay? That's very, very dangerous. Okay? Because in essence, they're now becoming the judge, okay, of the information. They have, in essence, made themselves the judge, jury, and executioner of the information. When the information, whether Trump is lying or not, okay, is not relevant. It's whether people can hear his story and they can judge whether it is true or not. No different than, I should be able to hear the pro-choice's information and what their arguments are. Because my arguments aren't weak on the pro-life issue. I'm not afraid of pro-choicers coming and trying to convince me to become a pro-choice member. I have no issues with that. But conversely, you don't allow us, the pro-life movement to be silenced, okay, because you think that they're idiots or whatever that they are. So there is certainly a subjectivity also in the bad information category. So not only is there a bad information in such a way that it's pornography or it's, sex trafficking or whatever it may be, but there's also bad information because it's being censored, because good information is being censored. And so that is what's going on, okay? So this, but I would think that so that's number one. Number two is isolationism and social skills. Okay, so be aware that we can create an alter ego in our virtual life, as well as create and have lack of social skills in the physical world. So we're going to try to create a family-friendly technology policy that will allow us to spiritually grow and socially grow, both physically as well as technologically, okay? And have one for our family so they can be responsible for the technology and not be overly overwhelmed with it, okay? So going back to technology, okay? So what do we need to do as parents, okay? So I'm a firm believer in we have to set goals, right? Because if we don't set goals and we don't set some form of objectivity, say this is what our objective to achieve, then we'll never achieve it, right? It's kind of like that joke that says the pilot says, "Hey, we're making great time, okay, getting to our destination, but the problem is we don't know where we're going. So how can you make great time on your destination if you don't know what the destination is?" Right? So we have to know, what is our destination? Okay, what are we trying to achieve? Okay, so the big thing we have to try to achieve is, one is age appropriate. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is make sure that the information and the technology is age appropriate. Okay, so we want to first introduce technology in there. I've seen parents who use technology as a pacifier, and that is not the best thing to do. The kids are crying or whatever, and they just throw them the iPhone. Here's a movie, go watch it. Okay, we do a lot of these things, right? Where they're glued to the television in the car, while they're driving and stuff. So there's a lot of things that go on. So introducing the technology in age appropriateness. The other is the information that's out there also, that making sure that the age appropriate time for information is available to them. And so those two things that we talked about, isolationism and social skills, as well as bad information, are helped. Our goal is all about age appropriate, right? So, and I'm going to give you an example, is that in our household, we do not allow any of our kids to have their own iPhone or smartphone until their senior year. Okay. into their senior year. And we've gotten a lot of flack. My kids always argue, and they say, "Oh, Johnny has it, and he's only a freshman, or he's had it since he's in 7th grade." And we tell them, "No, you're not getting it until your senior year." And then we give them a flip phone, and they totally hate the flip phone. They go flipping on us, I guess, and they really do hate that. But we say, "No, you're not getting a smartphone, all right?" And then with the flip phone, they can't leave a message on the flip phone. It literally says, "This is we don't allow them to leave a message," and they can't text on the flip phone. Okay, so it's really meant to be just a phone. But then in their senior year, they're allowed to have a smartphone, and then even with that smartphone, we actually allow we make it very under controlled. We lock things down. All right. And then as the senior year grows, we start unlocking various things. So we give, in the beginning, we allow them to text. No internet, but we do allow them to use text and phone and a couple other things. And now because of COVID, allow them to use the FaceTime and everything else. So, and then eventually we start getting them in we allow them to use the web parts of it, and then around their junior year, the winter of their senior year, we allow them to have social media accounts, and we open up the social media accounts. We don't allow them to open it up. We open it up, we friend them, we do all these things in the beginning, and then we move on. And in this period, we know their passwords, we know everything, so that we can monitor what's going on. Now, you might say, well, that's kind of overly done, is it? Well, let's discuss why we're doing it that way. First of all, the reason why we wait until the senior year is because we want to make sure that majority of their high school life is the physical world, is building socially, social skills in the physical world. You really can't do that when they're glued to their smartphones, okay? And we're going to talk about the smartphones in the next episode, why that is the case, and we'll talk about that more. But for right now, it's very hard for people to hone onto a social skills. This was about 15 years ago. I went on a retreat. This was 2005, 2008, when smartphones were just being popular and texting was very popular. And I remember there was a bunch of kids. Okay, we were there with majority of secular kids. When I say secular, non-homeschooler, I should say. I apologize. Non-homeschooler kids, and there were about, I think, 8 of them, and they're all in a circle, all texting each other. They're not even talking to each other. They're just texting each other, literally. Okay. And when I asked them, I said, "Why are you texting each other when you're right here?" And I said, "Well, there's people who aren't here, and we want to incorporate them in, and that's why we're texting everyone." It's like, wow, then you're not really appreciating the physical aspect of you being around and socializing. So it's a great way of building that social skills, okay, in the when they're in high school, right? The second is the fact that high school life and younger are the most formative years, okay? The most formative years. You are not going to have them, socially speaking, after they go to college, okay? There's not going to be a lot of influence after college, okay? And so, all the way up to high school, this is the time to be a parent and have that formative years. So you want to build those social skills in those formative years. That's what you want to do. You don't want to waste that time in just giving them an iPhone or an Android so that they just kind of spend half their life on that phone and everything else. So this is a great time for parents to influence them, okay? Because they're not going to learn it when they grow out of college, right? You'll have zero influence on them after college, when they go to college and after, especially. So it's going to be very difficult. The third is, and a lot of psychologists will tell you this, is that from high school and youngers, addiction is harder to break when they start at an earlier age, okay? So a person who starts smoking at the age of, let's say, 25, 26, or even 19 or 20, is going to be a lot easier to break the habit of smoking than if someone who smoked at 13 or 14 years old. It's because our brains are being developed And because their brains are being developed at that time, there are going to be certain, parts of our brain that is just going to always react to whatever stimulus that it was used to at a younger age. So the addiction becomes harder to break when you start at an earlier age. And a lot of parents say, well, aren't you afraid that they're going to look odd when they go to college and they, and they don't know how to use that technology? And I know kids, I know technology. Technology is very, very easy to use. They're not going to be dumb. I can venture to say within 2 to 3 months, my kids have mastered how to use the smartphone. Okay, so it's not about the learning curve, because it really doesn't take that long to jump in there. But what I do know is that they have good social skills, and to the point where my kids, when they are in social environments, they don't bring out the iPhones. They don't really use it as much as other people who have been addicted to it. So you're going to see that they actually are a lot more responsible. They know they're more social aware, okay, than others. I'm not saying that they don't use their their phones, but they're not glued to it. There's a big difference between gluing to it and using it, okay? And they can also operate in the social world, okay? They know how to make friends. They know how to talk to people. They know how to make people laugh. They enjoy the moment in the physical world, okay? So that is why age appropriate is there. So that deals with the social skills. We also talk about bad information. We don't want bad information. So in the beginning, when they're young, we don't allow certain things to occur. We monitor them and see what's going on. So we have to make sure that the bad information is out there. Now, trust me, we have our kids on the computer because we do distance learning as a homeschoolers. We do distant learning. We do allow them to research certain things. So, computers are not, foreign in our household. We have lots of computers. In fact, we introduced their computers at an early age. A lot of it is for typing and for educational purposes. Okay, and then later they will use it for other things. But so it's not like we have zero technology in our household until they turn like a senior. No, they're there. Okay, but we just know the pitfalls between a smartphone and a computer. Okay, and we'll talk about that technology in our next episode. Okay, so now we have to talk about goal is to teach them that the goal and the objective as parents is to teach that technology is a tool, not just an entertainment, not just these things. Okay, it's not an entertainment. It's a tool. It's a tool for us to grow. It's a tool for us to for a job. All right, but as young kids, because we have so much time, especially high school, college, and younger, we tend to lean on our technology more for entertainment than for learning it as a tool, right? Because they really don't have a job that uses technology as a tool, all right? So they lean more towards it, okay? So I'll give you an example. An example of that is when I was growing up, we didn't have technology, but we had phones, okay? And, as a high school kid, I would be on the phone. My dad would yell at me and say, David, get off the phone. Because I'd be on the phone for like 2-3 hours because I'm talking to my friends most of the time. That's entertainment purposes. But as I got older, I realized that the phone is most of the time is used for work. It's a tool. It's a tool for me to contact other people, to get sales, to communicate with other people what needs to get done, And now my time on the phone for just talking and chatting greatly is reduced to more that it's a tool. So we need to teach them that this technology is a tool that we use. Yes, we can use the tool for entertainment. Yes, we can. And that's not a bad thing. But when we only view it as entertainment, that's where the danger comes into play, okay? Where we see, influencers, where we see this, as opposed to, I can go to, the gym as entertainment. I can go, golfing, or I can go fishing. I can talk to my friends as entertainment, physically talk to them on the, and entertain my friends as entertainment. I don't rely on the technology for me to play games or for me to do various things, socialize or, and those types of things. Okay. So, we're going to talk about the multiple use of smartphones in the next episode and see what they are all about. But there is multiple uses of smartphone. That's why smartphones have the biggest pitfalls than anything else. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. Okay. The other thing that we want to teach them is how to stay out of trouble. Okay. Identify them, trouble. Is it someone bullying you? Is someone being a predator, okay, and being aware of that. That's why age appropriate is important, because as an 8-year-old child or even a 13-year-old child, they should not be worried about being bullied, okay, or socially bullying, because bullying, as I mentioned before, in the computer world, technology-wise, is so much easier because of this, virtualization, that they don't have to confront the person. So they have these less inhibitions, and they just say things that are totally bad. So the age appropriateness helps them stay out of trouble. Helps them say, you know what, I don't need to worry about child predators. Okay, and let's think of it this way: would you drop off your 11-year-old child or 10-year-old child in the mall, okay, and leave them alone? In essence, that's what you're doing in the computer if you just give them a computer and you don't monitor it. You're leaving that child in the mall by themselves for a long time, where there could be any predator that can just pick up this child and abuse, okay? It's I don't know if you guys ever saw the show. It was called The Americans Most Wanted. The show's what do you call it? The host of that show, his son was abducted at the mall, wide public area, So we want to make sure that the area and technology that they're going into is age appropriate, that they don't have to worry about bullies, they don't have to worry about child predators and all the other things that go on. Certainly when they get older and they're more socially aware and they know more about this type of stuff, then, that you can open up the gates a little bit more. So yeah, staying out of trouble. Also teaching them this is good information, this is bad information. You don't need to have other people competing against your child's time and their idea of what is right or wrong. You want to form your children what is right or wrong, in this formative years, and you don't need other people through social media, through the internet, telling them the opposite, okay? You don't need that competition. So really what you want to do is you want to have everything age appropriate and guided along. This is the role of a parent, okay? That's really what it is. If you, would you allow your 11-year-old child to be next to, a person who curses every day? I would doubt it. Okay, I remember I read a joke one time that said that parents would never allow, a rapist or a murderer, a person who, or bad information, a satanic person maybe, to be allowed in the house to talk to them. But the irony is we do allow that to happen, and we call it television. It's the same thing, all right? We worry so much about our kids being influenced by, having physical people who might not be dressed appropriately or doing all these things. But if you allow television or if you allow the internet to have unbridled access to our kids, you're just allowing that to happen, okay? So what we see in the physical world, what we want to prevent in the physical world, we also have to prevent in the virtual world, in our technology, okay? So age appropriate, right? That's what we learn. Okay, the next is what I call selective search, teaching them how to search things selectively, okay? There's two types of media, or at least I call it two types of media, right? There's passive media and there's active media, okay? So what are they? Passive media is media, okay, or technology that is just there, and then you have to hunt it down. An excellent example of that is the World Wide Web, okay, all the web pages out there, all right? You have to find it, and it will pretty much, there's tons of information out there, but you got to find it, okay? You can use Google to assist you and look at it and stuff, but just be careful that they do have information and they rank it oddly. But it's out there. That's safer than what I would call active, media. Active media is the media in which you turn it on and it's actively telling you things. Okay. A good example of that is the television, okay? Television is active. You turn it on and you have the news on and it's actively telling you something. And you're basing everything off of what that person is saying or not saying, okay? Remember that. Not saying is just as important as what it's saying, okay? If and I'll give you an example. If one television news is not showing all the violence in the cities, and they're not showing anything, but another one is, the television show, the news that doesn't show the violence, aren't really showing the full news. So you're going to get skewed. You're going to say, well, what violence are out there? There's not any violence. Okay, so it's also what it's lacking. So the active television is really a lot more dangerous because when you're glued to a television, again, it's what they're saying, it's their point of view, and what they're not saying, okay, that is important to understand. This is why if you had to choose between the two, passive media, going to the World Wide Web and researching it and those types of things are a lot better than active television. And yet so many of us are glued to the active media, which is the television show, okay, and the news that's out there. So active media and technology, very, very bad, okay? It's worse than the passive one, okay? Lastly is we want to create good habits as opposed to bad habits, okay? We talked about that from a social skills standpoint, but we really, the big thing is what are bad habits, right? So a bad habit is social etiquette in a sense of, you go to you go to a social event, and instead of interacting with people, you break out your iPhone and you're looking at the iPhone, right? Or maybe you're at the dinner table and you're open up the iPhone and not having a conversation with your family member. Or maybe you eat dinner real quickly so you can go to your television, go to television or go to some other forms of technology. Or maybe you don't even eat at the dinner. Everyone is eating in their own rooms because they don't care. Those are bad habits. Or maybe in the car, all right? When I told my wife, I said, one of the things that we don't allow is we don't allow earplugs to be in the car. If we're going to listen or watch something, everyone's going to watch the same thing. And the reason why was when I grew up, I had a Walkman, and I wouldn't say I was addicted to it, but I would listen to music and I would have earplugs, in there. And I realized it created a sense of isolationism. And I said, I'm not going to allow that in my kids. And so they don't. All right. Once they turn, 18 or out of my house, whatever they want to do out there, that's their responsibility. But when I was forming them, and still am, I didn't allow that bad habit to occur. You're not going to isolate yourself. You're going to be part of this family. You're going to have conversations with our family. And the reason why the central entertainment with all the kids is because everyone can comment and talk to each other about that. So if we're listening to, let's say, a book on tape or something like that, I don't know how many times my kids talk about, this book and that book, even after we listen to it, okay? And they can relate. But if everyone has their own books on tape, they can't communicate with each other on that common conversation, okay? So that's why we don't allow that, And yes, maybe the older ones have to kind of be patient because most of our books have to be geared to mostly around like 13-year-old, 12, I would say 12 years of age. Yeah, and then when my kids are 16, they're like, well, but you know what? A lot of them don't complain. A lot of them are like, okay. And but they like it that they can talk about it. Hey, remember this book? And we read about that book, and it becomes a central focus in our family. So we don't allow that. So these are a couple of bad habits that we want to do. So we want to create good habits and not bad habits. All right. So those are the goals that we're trying to achieve as parents. Okay. So let me wrap that up. Age appropriate. Okay. Our goal is to teach them that it's a tool and not just entertainment. Educate them a little bit more on the smartphone, and we'll talk about that more, but there's multiple uses of the smartphone. Another is staying out of trouble. The other is be aware between passive and active media, okay? And then creating bad habits, okay? And again, all of those goals and objectives are centralized around two things that we're trying to achieve. Good social habits, socializing skills, and the second is good and bad information. If you notice, that's what they're all about, okay? So now we go to what is our role as parents, okay? As parents. Parents have the most central role and influence in our kids with technology, okay? And again, if we have parents who are paranoid about technology and they think technology is evil, I don't think that's good either, okay? It defeats the purpose of technology. And as Maximilian Kolbe would always say, we got to use technology to glorify God, okay? If we hide that, it winds up being, burying our talents inside of, the dirt, right? So we want to make sure that we understand the real purpose of technology. Conversely, we can't be loosey-goosey with our technology because, as I mentioned before, there is a lot of dangers out there between child predators, between the information that is being sent. I mean, you just have to look at what's happening in social media to see how easy even adults succumb to misinformation and poor social habits, okay? So our role is important, the first role and the most important is that we set the tone by example, okay? We as parents set the tone by example, okay? If you're a parent that uses the iPhone we're eating dinner, that's not a good example. If you're constantly glued to that iPhone, it's not a good example, okay? There's times where you can use it. I know, especially for working parents, it's difficult because sometimes we do get interrupted when it's an emergency or whatever. But we need to be very careful and vigilant to say, I'm only going to look at this if it's really, really an emergency, and that's it, okay? And keep your time in there. So really one of the most important is by example. We are the role models, okay? And, the first thing I always say, especially to married couples, is you got to be in sync, okay? You got to be in sync. And the way that you have to be in sync is by three ways. One is by example, okay? So you got to be, a role model. Now, you're going to say, what if my spouse disagrees? Well, then, if they disagree, and let's say by example, let's say they say, I want to use it on the phone. What you got to do is you got to talk to your children and say, daddy or mommy needs to use it because she's using it for work for most purposes and those types of things. So, try to give them a little bit more mitigating circumstances. But, the utopia is the parents are in sync, okay? Sometimes we do make, mistakes. We can check on each other. Hey, we shouldn't be using that phone or whatever. But we have to do that. This is how we can grow in virtue. Maybe you are addicted to the technology, and now you have to grow in virtue to say, nope, for the betterment of my kids, I want to be that great example. Let's look at St. Augustine's mother. She was an alcoholic. St. Monica was an alcoholic, and so she knew when she was confronted that she was an alcoholic to say, I need to stop. I need to stop drinking. And that's what made her a great saint. Because I'm sure you can't be a great saint or strive for virtue if you're addicted to alcohol. Okay? So she changed. Okay? So we as parents can grow in holiness by changing and becoming a good moral example to our kids on how to appropriately use our technology. So, example, leadership by example, ductus exemplo in Latin. The next is parents need to guide their children, okay? A lot of parents, I hate to say this, don't know how to parent. They subdelegate it so much to teachers and to, sports people that they don't want to guide their children. But you have to. You are their guide. You are their mentor. You are the person that they respect. They want you to be told what to do, believe it or not, all right? You just need the courage and fortitude and the right information to help them guide that, okay? And again, it's a great way to become a saint, okay? This is your job. This is your responsibility, okay? So they need to be guided. What's right? What's wrong? All right, what they can or can't do, okay? And at the end of the day, you're helping your children to grow in love and virtue, and you're helping them to grow and use the technology in an appropriate way. The next is to create a policy, okay? You have to create a policy. And you're going to find that creating a policy in your household is going to be a lot easier in technology than if you don't have a policy. When you're trying to make decisions on the fly, and this is not just at work, this is everywhere. I mean, this is why businesses and the military, why do you think they have policies and procedures? Is it because they just want to be, controlling? No, because it's very easy to manage large amounts of people when you have policies and procedures. You shouldn't be making up things on the fly, okay, and making decisions on the fly, because based off your emotions or situations, you're going to make good or bad decisions. But if you have a policy and procedure in your household, then it becomes easy for you to just adjudicate what's going on. Our policy is, no one uses technology at 10 o'clock. All right, I saw you using technology. You're wrong. Everyone knows that policy. Everyone knows it, and people will enforce it. So when kids want to do the right thing and they don't know how to behave and they don't have a policy for that, then they don't really, you're going to create more chaos. And more chaos is going to create more headaches, and it's going to be worse for you than anything else. So you got to create a policy. What is that policy that's out there? And we'll help you. We'll talk about that in the next episode. Okay. So, the other thing that policy does, believe it or not, is that it brings peace, is that it's so objective, and everyone knows it, they follow it, they do all these things. It's very easy. The other thing is that kids have to realize that when they grow, when they get a job, that business is going to have a policy. So I tell my kids, I said, if you don't like this policy, then you know what? You should understand that every business is going to have a policy. I just opened up a different area, a different location in Massachusetts, where I hired, about 8 people. And my technology policy there, because of certain, security reasons, they can't bring their iPhones into a certain area. They got to keep it somewhere else. That's a policy. Can you imagine that? Telling them you cannot use now they can leave that area and use the iPhone, but they can't bring that iPhone into a certain secured area. Okay. So there's going to be policies out there. So they're learning how to grow up and even thrive in a business, and that of course all businesses are going to have a policy. So having a policy will really, really help you out. So if you can't, and I hate to say this, but there's a famous saying that says you got to fake it till you make it, right? Some of these policies you might think like, oh man, even these are going to be tough for me to do it. Well, you know what? This is what's going to make you grow in virtue and make you a saint, okay? But you got to fake it till you make it. You got to kind of, limp along until you build those virtues. And we know that, okay? And maybe you can even be part of that, and say, hey, no, mommy and daddy, they made a mistake. We shouldn't have done that, and then becomes even fuller and funner in that policy making, okay? So the key thing here for parents is you have a vital role. You have a vital role because of your God-given right as a parent. And from high school down, possibly even college down, that's the most impactful time as a parent to influence, guide your children. And so we can't fear to guide them, to lead them. And in the end, it will help them to be a better child. Also and more importantly, is when you do this, you're going to become a saint. Because you're going to have to change who you are and how you behave. That's what you're going to have to do. Because at the end of the day, leadership by example always wins the day. That's what's going to happen. Okay? So, let's wrap it up, and what we're going to do is we have a lot more other topics we're going to talk about. So I have a feeling this is going to lead to probably 3 episodes. My next episode, I'm going to really focus on how to create a policy and what are some policies that are out there. We're going to talk about how creating a sense of community to help out support you in technology and a couple other things. And then we'll have another one that deals with technology itself. Okay. So to wrap up this episode, in conclusion, parents have the vital role of leading by example, developing, guiding, and enforcing family technology policies that help their children thrive by integrating and using technology to grow both spiritually and in society, while protecting them, especially in their younger years. There is no simple trick or syllabus of parenting, but it will take building virtue and new habits coupled with some gems of wisdom, which I'm teaching here, and your unique family situation to build a family-friendly technology zone. Remember, as Catholics, our primary responsibility is our children, and so we can become saints by growing in virtue during the challenge of technology. All right? So take that technology challenge and become a saint. Let's end it with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord Jesus, you gave us the God-given gift of children, of being responsible for them and helping them and growing them. You have delegated that responsibility to us to mimic you as God the Father, rearing our children in love and holiness. Help us to be holy in implementing that in a technology-challenging world. As we pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Thanks for listening to me, David Cease, at Practical Catholic. Please share this podcast to others, especially if they have benefited you. Also, feel free to share any reflections or leave a comment on the podcast, Instagram and Facebook at Practical Catholic, or visit my webpage at practicalcatholic1, that is the number 1.com.
You're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.